Okay, just a couple opening statements then. On the injury front, fortunately, sounds like we got out of the game against Sac State fairly healthy. Nothing major to report there, kind of what you'd expect this time of year, some lingering nicks and dings. I thought that, with a limited week of practice, I thought Mac Bignell played very well. We had to play 98 snaps of defense. That was not in the game plan, and I think that was a huge factor in the game. Late in the game, we struggled. And a big part of that was, you see our lack of depth on the defensive line come into play in that situation. And we only played 66 snaps offense. And so that's really, you don't necessarily pay attention to that during the course of the game, but when you look at the stat sheet on the way home and you're like, that's not a recipe for us to be successful. And so I think that was a factor in the game. I mean, obviously we had some explosive plays and put some points on the board on offense, but in the second half, when we needed to get stops, we did at times, and then we needed to get a little bit of help and get a few first downs and control the clock. And we've got to pay attention to that as coaches, myself primarily. When a game gets into that scenario, we've got to manage the clock better to give ourselves an opportunity to get some rest on defense. And they're an up-tempo team, and we're going to play another one. In fact, NAU might be faster than any team that we played up to this point in time, and not just in terms of their tempo, but also because of their skill athletes. And so you have to take some questions.
Tell us what you think about Northern Arizona.
Northern Arizona. Well, you look at the stat sheet, they've got 2,520 yards of total offense on the season. That's 504 yards per game. They were the preseason #1 team picked by media and coaches in the league, and I certainly see why after looking at their talent. Their skill talent, they've got 3 FBS bounce downs, 2 junior college transfers. They had the freshman of the year in the FCS. I know Mr. Cookus did not play last week, and that obviously impacted their ability to be successful on offense. But they have plenty of guys surrounding Kemp if he is the guy. I look at Kendall Taylor's the guy that played for us at Washington when I was there. He was the guy that we used in speed sweeps, and he was a kickoff returner and punt returner for us, and a really good player and very dynamic. And I know they've got a number of guys at the wide receiver position. I mean, you just kind of go down the list. I mean, they've got 1, 2, 3, 4 guys with over 100, 5 guys with over 100 yards in receptions, 1 with 99. And so you got guys that are averaging 110 yards a game, 81 yards a game. That's pretty impressive. I mean, that's obviously some very, very explosive numbers, but that doesn't mean they don't run the ball, because they've got a back that averages 81 yards a game and another back that averages 90 yards a game. And so they're very balanced on offense. They're very explosive on offense. And, certainly the tempo is one of the things that concerns me, because, as I mentioned previously, I think that can expose our lack of depth and some of the things that we've had some issues with in terms of injuries on the defensive line. And so we've got to do a good job of getting them off the field and managing ourselves on offense so that we can give ourselves a chance. Defensively, they're an interesting outfit. They played a bunch of guys. And they have a ton of guys that have stats. The guys that stood out to me a little bit, at defensive end, Lorenzo Melvin, number 54, I think he's an explosive guy, leads their team in sacks. And I think he's the guy that kind of looks the part on the defensive front. I think they've got some other solid guys inside. I like, one of their linebacker number 11 Castillo is their leading tackler. I think the most explosive player is number 7, Byron Evans. He shows a little bit of twitch and ability to both rush the passer and does a good job in coverage. And then they've got the Polynesian kid, number 90, kind of a run stopper inside for him. And then Leandre Vaughn, who's a guy that I think is a pretty good secondary player. Got 5 pass breakups on the year, and so I see them as they play a lot of base defense and mix downs, and when it's time to go, they bring it. And it's a little bit of exotic stuff too. It's not kind of standard field scrape or inside pressure. They kind of dial up some blitz of the week stuff, and I think Andy Thompson has he's been there a long time, and that's one of the things that stands out to me a lot. Like we were talking about the Bryant staff, I think that that staff has had a little bit of movement from time to time, but Andy's been there forever. I think Jimmy Beal's been there quite a while, the running back coach, one of the guys that helps him with recruiting. And then, obviously their head coach, I think, is the longest tenured coach in the Big Sky Conference, and it's not even close. And so they've got good continuity. They've done a nice job of, I think, mining the talent that's available in Arizona, but they've also got a lot of good connections and relationships with FBS programs and junior college programs, and a lot of their talented skill players come from those places.
Is Chris your starting quarterback moving forward?
Haven't made a decision on that. I think Chris is obviously going to be a big part of what we do moving forward. And I spoke with both Chris and Tyler yesterday, and both of them get it, and what I said was whatever the role is, whether it's the start, like I use the baseball pitcher in kind of analogy. It's like somebody's going to be the starter. We might need middle relief, and we're definitely going to need some closers. And so how that plays out is kind of still one of those things that's a work in progress. And I think that obviously Chris has provided a spark for us on Saturday, and he's a dynamic, fun player to watch. But we're very limited in what we can do with him. And you can even see in certain situations. I mean, even taking a knee at the end of the game, at the end of the first half, so we don't have to punt. Our 2 minute stuff. And so, how much can we put on this kid's plate and have him be able to operate effectively? And that's that's what we're massaging kind of through right now. And I think he's got the ability to do a lot more than he's done. But I don't want to overburden him and provide too much for him. And the good news is, I think that I think Tyler's certainly capable of doing some very good things for us, and has shown those flashes. And is a very mature kid, understands what we want to do. And I think that even if we do need him to come in a situation, I think it could even benefit him. I think that being able to take some of the pressure off of him and let him go play can really benefit him. And I think it might be the best of both worlds for us. I think to say that we're a true two quarterback system, whether we're going to roll guys within a series or by series, I don't know if that's the case. I think it's almost a feel thing, and we've got to do what we feel like is best for our organization at that given moment.
Jeff, what does Chris need to do to be a great quarterback?
I think he just needs to get reps. He's got to develop a little bit more spin on, a little bit more pop on the ball coming out of his hand. I think he throws a good deep ball, throws good seam balls, quick game, quick screen. Sometimes the ball floats a little bit. I think having a better understanding of how defenses try to align and attack offenses. I think those are things that getting us into good plays, and those are things that he needs to learn to develop. But the one thing he can't coach is his innate ability, and I think you saw that on full display on Saturday evening in Sacramento, and he was easily the fastest guy on the field. When he opened up and ran, and that's something you cannot coach. He did make some plays with his feet that we probably don't have another guy that can do that. And so that's when things break down. You have to have the ability to create outside the offense some, and I think Chris gives you that. And but there's a learning curve there. Chris isn't going to be perfect every time. He's not going to escape everybody every time, and he needs to know when to cut his losses and get down and protect himself and the football. And I think those are some of the things that he'll learn through repetition.
Courtney talked some about the lack of reps that he's gotten in the course of a week of preparation, just in terms of the read stuff.
Yeah.
And reps with the running back. Is that something you have to try to build more?
There's no question. I think part of it is, it's like, okay, you're picking and choosing what are you going to work on today. Okay, we want him to work on these passing aspects within the game plan, and we're robbing Peter to pay Paul because we're sending maybe Ben goes over and works the track stuff so the running backs can get the timing, and we're not doing as much as we should probably do with Chris in some of those regards. And that showed up on the play on the goal line or the 7-yard line where we fumbled the ball, and it showed up 2 weeks ago against North Dakota where just his level of comfort with the guy next to him, and especially when you're putting different guys back there, we've got to get some continuity going there, and I think that's something that's easy to fix, and we need to do that.
You said Tyler was a little down on himself after the North Dakota game. How was he yesterday when you talked to him?
I thought he was good. I thought he was, I think he's a very mature guy. I thought he was awesome on the sideline. I didn't think there was, he did not create a distraction. He was very encouraging. He was helping Chris as he came off the field. He was ready to go, whatever the situation was. And I think that's who Tyler is. I think he's a first-class young man. And certainly anybody would be disappointed in that situation because you want to lead your team. And, we're going to need him. And he needs to stay focused and locked in. And whether he's the guy that's starting the game or finishing the game, we're going to need him. And I think he gets that, and he's ready to move forward and be a great member of this team.
Do you think the decision will be based on just how they practice this week?
I think some of it is that. I also think some of it's game plan. I really do. I think it's like, okay, what can we take advantage of? What's going to be best for us? What are the things that we can do? And I think it's a very, it's a little bit of there's a fine line there because we can't be grab bag on offense. We've got to hang our hat on some things. And so obviously if Chris is in there, that package is this. And if Tyler's in there, there's going to be pieces of that, but it's going to be different. Some of the things that Tyler can do with his arm and some of the things that Chris can do with his legs, are different. And so we've got to be smart about how we approach it and not ask any one of those guys to do things that they're not comfortable or not efficient at.
At this point in the season, how hard is it to get a guy ready in a week when you set a couple work days?
Well, the one thing I will say is Chris has banked reps. We even rolled him with the ones all the way back in fall camp. And so once we made the decision that he was going to play, he's gotten an opportunity to get reps week in and week out. But the biggest thing is probably the situational stuff. How many reps are you getting him on third downs? How many reps are you getting him in 2 minute and those kind of things? And I think that's where hopefully he's at that point in his progress now where he can handle a little bit more. And I think he is. I think I think we've handled this pretty good in terms of allowing him to get some playing time each week, and now he's basically has a full game almost under his belt now, and I think he's going to learn a ton from that experience.
You guys put up, I think, 508 total yards of offense, but only had 6 pass completions.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious about balance. You know, you always want, I guess, offensive balance, but does it matter in a situation like that when you're still rolling up yards? But
Yeah, I don't think it does. I mean, you take what they give you, and we had a ton of explosive run plays. I think Gunnar had over 100 yards, Chad had 86, Chris had over 100 yards. We were able to hit some shot plays down the field in the passing game, and so it was a little bit of what they were giving us and a little bit of how we were executing, and you'll take points any way you can get them. We had a couple of 1 and 2 and 3 play drives, and I think that, as crazy as it sounds, you don't ever want to take score points off the board, but I just think with the style that they were playing on offense, that was a huge factor in the fourth quarter, the fatigue of our defense. And you saw it, there were several plays where, Max got an opportunity to make a tackle in the open field, and he just needs to accelerate a little bit, and his legs are dead. And, we needed to sustain some drives in the fourth quarter on offense, and we didn't do it. And the biggest thing that happened in the game, I felt like we had a good, solid two-score lead, and we turned the ball over. They recovered on the 3-yard line. And not only that, was that an opportunity for us to put the nail in the coffin, but to their credit, they drove the ball all the way down and scored. And that changed the dynamic of the game. I think that gave them hope. And I think that was, somewhat deflating on our sideline. And, while we came back and battled, we didn't really play efficiently from that point on in the fourth quarter. We didn't create first downs or explosive plays on offense. And we didn't do a good job of getting off the field on defense.
Do you prepare as if Cookus is going to play, and how does he kind of compare to
Camp? Well, their offense is their offense. I thought they leaned a little bit more on the run game against Northern Colorado than they did perhaps in some other situations. I think that they're not like, when I watch them on offense, I think they're committed to running the ball. I think they do have offensive balance, as we spoke about a moment ago. And I think that one of the things that's interesting is there's not a lot of standard concepts: curl flat, drive, flood. I mean, it's get the ball out of your hands quick to get them to your athletes on the perimeter and stretch it horizontally, and then it's take shots down the field vertically and throw 50-50 balls and force you guys to have to, okay, if you're going to play tight, then we're going to go deep, and if you're going to play off, then we're going to throw quick. And so I think they're really efficient and good at what they do, and I think Kemp is capable of doing both of those things. Certainly Cookus is a very, very strong arm. I mean, you watch him against the ASU and you're like, it looks like a Pac-12 quarterback. And he's got he does have some Pac-12 talent out there on the perimeter, because a handful of those guys played in the Pac-12. And so that's something that I think is challenging. But I don't think you're seeing stylistically a whole bunch different. So, which is good, because either one of the quarterbacks that plays, you're seeing a similar offense. It's just now one guy can spin it into some pretty tight windows.
John Walker's been a really good player for you guys. Is this going to be his biggest test, especially when he is lined up against guys like Butler?
Yeah, I think this, and then you're going to see it obviously when we play Eastern Washington. I mean, I think that those, just what I've seen, it's interesting because I kind of think I have a little bit of a feel for this league now. And what I've seen, without question, those two groups have really, really good skill talent. Northern Arizona and Eastern Washington, I'm talking about those two. And I think there's a lot of commonalities, though. I think in this league, really, O-lines are O-lines. I think there's some good players and there's some good groups, but there's not a huge disparity on the O-lines. Defensive lines are kind of defensive lines. There's some really good players, but there's not necessarily groups that you're going, holy cow, they got 4 or 5 guys that are just going to terrorize you. And so I think what separates people in this league is quarterback play, skill positions on the perimeter. And when I say that, I'm talking about in the secondary and at wide receiver as well. And so I think when you look at a team like Northern Arizona, you're looking at probably a level ahead of most of the teams in this league with their skill talent on the perimeter.
Are you getting close to getting Nigel back?
I sure hope so. He had this deal he did was a 6-week deal. So he had 3 consecutive weeks of PRP injections, and then it's supposed to be a 3-week recovery after that. And so that would put us at the Weber State game.
After this tough start, do the objectives change for the next month and a half at all?
Nah, I from day one we've talked about competing and improving, and I mean, to me the discouraging thing is that there's some patterns that are developing here. Late in games, we're not at our best. Whether it's we need first downs, whether it's we need stops, whether it's just don't penalize yourself or drop balls. And so as coaches, the things that we've talked about improving upon is simplifying our clutch or our 2-minute offense, because we've got to be more efficient in that. You know, when we have those, we've had opportunities in each one of our losses in those scenarios, and we've got to capitalize, and so we've got to be streamline that to allow our guys to play fast. We've got to be better on third downs. You know, defensively, we've been pretty good up until last week. Offensively, we've kind of had some struggles there anyway. And so I think it's, again, simplifying that package, examining what we're doing with the personnel that we have, and what do we need to do to become more efficient on third downs. And those are two things that we've talked a lot about as a staff. That's going to be a big part of us moving forward. And then, you know, what I challenge the players on is it's time to grow up. I don't care what class, you know, you make excuses all day long, but the bottom line is, you know, okay, Chris, you played 5 games Division I football, all right? This isn't your first rodeo, let's go. You know, Damian Washington, you played 5 games of Division I football, okay? Opportunity comes, make the play. And we've got some guys that are veteran guys that need to hear the same message, that opportunities are all over the place. I mean, Curtis Amos got to make a catch, period. I mean, that's not throwing anybody under the bus, that's just a fact, you know? And so I think he'd be the first one to say that. And so we've got, you know, there's plenty of blame to go around, and it starts with me as the head coach in terms of tightening some things up on some details and be a little bit more demanding and about some things that we need to do in critical situations.
Are you referencing Damian, you know, he had that interception, and that would have really sealed the win there?
Well, I think that what I'm saying is there were a lot of opportunities. A lot. And what you have to do when the opportunity presents itself is focus on the most important thing. It might be the ball. It might be the snap count. It might be hand placement. It might be where your eyes need to be. But that's kind of what I'm talking about, is that, you know, there was, you know, those of you that were there know there was plenty of chances. And we've said the same thing about the Idaho game now. We've said the same thing about the UND game, and now we're saying the same thing. We've got a pattern developing here, and we need to change it. And now what I think needs to happen, as I said, is I think we've got to be at our best when our best is needed. I think we're not playing our best football in clutch situations at the end of games. And I think we've done a good job of putting ourselves in positions to be competitive in every game. But that's not why I'm here. And that's got our urgency and our attention to detail and our focus in critical opportunities needs to increase.
Mitch, any of these running backs, they've added some speed there significantly since they did. When they're running this offense, how much of that speed catered to?
I think they're all kind of big backs, though, if you look at them, and they're all in that 200-pound plus range. I know Kendall can run really well. As I said, he was kind of a fly. He's actually put some weight on since he was at Washington. And he was kind of a fly sweep guy for us there, and did some things for us on special teams, and could actually stretch the field vertically decently. And so he played receiver for us at Washington. And he's playing running back, and so he's just one example, but they utilize him very well out of the backfield. And that's where the matchups can be a problem with his speed, is they run him on a wheel route and they get him on the linebacker, for example, or they bring him up the seam and they've got him on a safety, and he's got better speed than that safety. And I think that's one thing that stands out. It's a very appropriate observation that this team has excellent team speed, certainly better than we do. And so that's something that, not just how fast they run plays on offense, but how fast their skill players are. And that's something that gives you headaches. You stay up late at night going, okay, well, in a one-on-one situation, how do we mitigate this? And at times, what you got to do is, you know, you got to just be smart about it and let them, hey, you want to catch that 15-yard play, you're going to get 15 yards, and live to fight another day. And then on the other side of the ball, we've got to do a better job of, you know, maintaining the football. You know, time of possession, I think, matters in this game.
It's the first time you had the true sort of rotation at right guard with Patrick and Monty. How did you think that worked?
I thought it was good. I thought Monty actually played really well. You know, he's kind of, you know, he's an old dog. You know, I mean, he's a younger player, but obviously an LDS kid going on a mission. His body doesn't bounce back quite as quickly, and he's kind of had, you know, just a nagging, you know, ankle sprain, not a high ankle, but just one of those deals. And I think especially you go through practice and weather starts changing and just being taped up, and in that situation, he gets pretty sore. And so I don't know that he's going to be able to play a full game for a while here. And the good news is I think he and Patrick complement each other really well, and that's been something that's, I think, helped us. And so I was pleased with the play of our offensive line. I felt like they did a nice job. And the one thing that Coach Armstrong mentioned after the game was the one N99. He thought he was the best guy that we had played against. You know, so he thought he was a really good player, and the players seemed to feel that way too. That, you know, going into the game, he thought, okay, they got two good-looking productive players on the edge, but, you know, you don't know until you get in the battle with him, and felt like those guys seemed to think he was one of the better guys they played against.
You talked about some patterns developing on your team. Are there any patterns that could explain Northern Arizona's slow start? Obviously not having Cookus last week.
Yeah, I think Cookus last week was a huge disadvantage for them. They play a really good Pac-12 team to open the season. They were competitive in that one. They go on the road to Western Illinois, a playoff team, and they play kind of a hard-fought game there. And Western Illinois, watching that game, I mean, they've got some good players. I mean, they've got some good length and speed on their team, and they actually matched up, I thought, pretty well against NAU. Then you have, you know, kind of the anomaly game against Highlands, and then you play Eastern, who's a really good football team. And Cookus goes out in that game. They actually kind of make it, I think it might have been a 10-point game, might have been an 8-point game, I can't remember. They went down and scored, and then they got the ball back, and Cookus is in the game, and they're, you know, you're thinking, well, shoot, here they go, they're going to make a run here. And then he leads the game, and kind of got away from them a little bit at the end because they weren't able to push the ball down the field as effectively. And, you know, I don't know. I mean, I know this. I think they're the most talented team I've seen on film at the skill positions, and I put Idaho into that category as well. I think they've got better skill players at receiver and running back than Idaho did. And, you know, so I'm nervous about that for sure. I mean, I'm very impressed with their talent.
How would you gauge just the overall, you mentioned a couple of specific guys, but just the overall confidence of your team? I mean, 8 points in 3 losses, that's probably pretty hard to.
Yeah, it's amazing how frustrating and maddening it can be, and you can't allow it to you know, affect your preparation or your mindset or your attitude. And you know, I think that's just kind of what we do. I mean, we show up and we go to work, we flush it on Sunday, and you come back in, and you know, the hard part for me now is I have to relive it again on Monday, but you know, you get used to that. I like our kids. I like our approach. I think our coaches have done a good job with these guys, and you know, I think, you know, our margin for error is very slim, and you see that, especially late in games. That's where it's shown up, and it's a process. You know, we've got to do a good job of staying the course and being disciplined in our approach, and I know I will, and I'll demand that out of our coaches and our players, and you know, it's just it's interesting. It's interesting how fleeting victory can be, and we've just got to, you know, love each other up, circle the wagons, and let's go see what happens. We got a good football team coming to town on Saturday, and you know, they're a wounded animal too. I'm sure that they didn't envision themselves being at 1-4 right now, and I don't think most people in the conference did, but I think that speaks to the parity of our league and how hard it is to win on the road in our league. And so we experienced that firsthand. You know, I mean, we had plenty of opportunities to put Sac State away, and they kept fighting and kept battling, and pretty soon you look up to the scoreboard and you're down 3.
It's a big game against 2 teams that are pretty hungry, you say?
Yeah, I think it's you know, 2 probably frustrated outfits that are gonna, you know, hook up on Saturday, and it's gonna come down to execution. That's what it's gonna come down to. And I think that they would probably say the same thing about their loss against Northern Colorado. They turned the ball over and had a bunch of penalties and inopportune moments, and you know, you can't beat yourself. I mean, it's too hard to win. And I think that, you know, I told our team all the way back in August, bottom line is more games are lost than won. And I think if you look at our situation right now, you could definitely relate that. You know, we've got to stop beating ourselves and make the other team make the plays.
All right, thanks, Coach.
Thanks, Coach.